Hello. Mitzvah Shem, tomorrow, Thursday, I'll be traveling from Nether Rosdale to Killickdish in Manchester. Traveling means loading 2 cars, a freezer, and enough clothes and paraphernalia to sink a battleship. Because of that, the chances are that even when I do get home, Mitzvah Shem shall go safely. I will not be able to give a shiur. So I thought I'd give a shiur on Wednesday evening, Wednesday night, and that way the shiur should be for Thursday. So we'll continue with our halachas of Succca. We're up to Succca daf of Beis with Beis, the Mishnah towards the bottom of the page. Nice, light, geschmack, Gemara, which you probably all know from your youth, but it's kedai to do chazor. Somebody makes a sukkah on a wagon. He makes a sukkah on a ship. It is kosher, but you're allowed to go into it on Yom Tov. We'll discuss later why would there be a havim and what's the chiddush that you're allowed to make a sukkah on a boat or on a tree, on a wagon. Well, something we shouldn't even say the chiddush is, let's see what Rashi says, afkat metal teloi v'lo kvir. The chiddush is, even if it's a moving one, that's the chiddush. The others that say the chiddush is to do with the fact of the wind. We'll come to it. If you make a sukkah on a tree or on a camel, you're not allowed to go to it on Yom Tov. Why not allowed to go? Because you're not allowed to climb a tree. You're not allowed to go on an animal on Yom Tov. The reason being, you can't climb a tree, you might break off a branch and do kreitza. If you ride an animal, you make him to hit it with a whip. And in those days, the whips were made out of a bunch of wood. And therefore, you might come to, again, do kreitza. So these are 4 kinds of scenarios. All of them are kosher. That is a ship, a wagon, a tree, an animal are all kosher. 2 of them you're allowed to go on Yom Tov, 2 not allowed to go on Yom Tov. The ones that you can't go on Yom Tov, there'll still be a kosher sukkah for Chol HaMoed sukkahs. Stein, that Mishnah then discusses what about a sukkah which is made partly on a tree and partly not on a tree. It's hard to picture it. We say the truth about it is the pictures don't help all that much. But the idea is that what happens is when you've got a sukkah which is half and half, so then what happens is the question is it considered that the sukkah is made by the tree or not? Here's one picture, there's another picture. There's another picture, each one of different levels of how much is made by the tree and how much is not. The Mishnah discusses. Stein be'ilon, 2 by the tree, ba'achas b'de'odom, or stein b'de'odom, ba'achas be'ilon, whether 2 of the walls are made on the tree or 1 on the tree, and the rest by a human being. You can't go on Yom Tov. But shalosh b'de'odom, ba'achas be'ilon, if 3 were made by human beings and 1 by the tree, you're allowed to go to Yom Tov. Says the Mishnah, top of Gimel Amud if the tree would be taken away, it could still stand, it is kosher, but not be Yom Tov, and you can go into it in Yom Tov. The reason being that since it is a kosher sukkah without the tree, it's considered a proper sukkah without the tree, and therefore there's no problem going into the Yom Tov. So basically, the rule is any sukkah which would be kosher without the tree, you can go to it on Yom Tov. So that's what Mani Mastis in who's our Mishnah that permits a sukkah on a ship. Person makes a sukkah on a ship. Gamliel says it's no good. Gamliel says it's okay. Gamliel will come on a ship. Rabbi Akiva built a sukkah on the ship. A wind came, blew it away. Rabbi Akiva made fun of him. He says, Rabbi Akiva, my darling, where's your sukkah? Your sukkah's gone. And that way, Gamliel was proving his point that a sukkah on a ship is no good. And here the Rishonim explain that this is the main chiddush. When you have a sukkah on a wagon, on a ship, the winds on there are much, much, much greater. If any of you got a chance of some holidays to go to the seaside is always a windy place. You go in the middle of the sea, it's even windier. So what happens is, this is the question over here. A sukkah which is on a ship, which is very, very windy, is a kosher. Now, Chazal always differentiate between what we call a ruach metzuya and ruach she'ena metzuya. A wind which is common or an unusually strong wind. That's two kinds of winds. We have it even in Bava Kama. If you do something, if you put something on the roof and a normal wind blows it off and breaks somebody's window, then you're chayav because you are the one who made that damages. Why did you put it on the roof when you know that a normal wind can blow it off? An unusual wind is a different halacha. It says what we call a usual wind and an unusual wind, an unusually strong wind. And the Gemara says like this, that when it comes to sea versus dry land, a strong, unusual wind on dry land is the normal kind of wind that you should expect on the sea. So really, we have three levels of wind. The normal wind on dry land, that's like a normal breeze you get on a dry land, that's a very weak wind. An unusually strong wind in dry land, which is equal to the normal wind of the sea. And then you have a higher level, an unusually strong wind at sea. Now you can work it out yourself, the Beis is going to say it. If a Succca cannot stand on a normal wind at dry land, it's obviously not a Succca. Because any wind can come and blow it over, it's not a Succca. If it can withstand even the strong wind at an unusually strong wind at sea, it can withstand it, then obviously that is a good Succca. The question is only if it can withstand a normal wind at dry land, but not an unusually strong wind at dry land, which is the common wind at sea. That is the machlekes on Gemara and Rabbi Akiva. And the machlekes is like this. So Rabbi Akiva will say to you, this Succca is strong enough. The proof being, if it would be on dry land, it would withstand a normal wind. The fact that it can't withstand a normal wind at sea, that's because the wind at sea is a particularly strong one. But it is a good Succca. Gamliel says, but look at the place you put it. Where did you put it? You put it on the sea. And at sea, a normal wind can blow it away. It's not a good Succca. That's what the Gemara now says. Everybody agrees it can't withstand even the normal wind of the dry land. Like Klumi, it's not a Succca at all. If it can withstand even an unusually strong wind, which is the dry land, everybody agrees it's kosher. That it can't withstand an unusually strong wind of dry land, which the Rishonim explain is the same as a ruach metzuya of the sea. A normal wind of the sea, it can't withstand, there's nothing. At dry land, it will withstand it, it is kosher. Okay. So that is the question. When you build a sukkah, it has to be strong enough to withstand a wind. There's an interesting shaila in the Poskim that when I first moved to Manchester, I was renting on Albert Avenue, a small house. I ended up thought I was only going to rent for a year, and then ended up renting there for a few years. So building a sukkah was a huge build business. So I had behind my house a place that I built, we would call it nowadays a flimsy sukkah. But it was strong because of the fact that it was surrounded by walls on all sides, but that were not the walls of the sukkah. The question is, a flimsy sukkah that would get blown over by a wind, but it's not getting blown over because next to it there's another wall. It's a shaila in the person where there's kosher. Most are makor, but there are those who are machmir. One should be aware that the sukkah is the walls of the sukkah. And if what's keeping the sukkah around is only because there's other walls next to it, that's a shaila if it works or not. Make a sukkah on an animal, the Rameir says it's okay, Yehuda says it's no good. According to Yehuda, a sukkah on an animal is no good. The more explains why. My Talmud Rabbi Yehuda. For the sukkah to be kosher, it has to be possible to be used for 7 days. And this can't be used for 7 days because on Yom Tov you can't go on it. Only Chol HaMoed. Since you can't use it on Yom Tov, so therefore it's not a sukkah of 7 days, and therefore even for Chol HaMoed it's no good. Rameir says that really this is a kosher sukkah for all 7 days. The problem is only that on Yom Tov you can't go on midrabanan. The fact that midrabanan you can't go on, it doesn't spoil the sukkah, and we say that it's a kosher sukkah and you can use it. If midateva you can use it on Yom Tov, that's okay. That would be a problem. But from here we see that a sukkah, for it to be kosher, has to be able to last for 7 days. We mentioned this once before. Now, if you use something which is going to dry out and wither away within less than 7 days, it's not a kosher sukkah. A sukkah has to be able to stand for 7 days. Now that we're changing from a sukkah which is built on top of an animal to a sukkah which the animal is being used as a wall. So what's like this? Also the behemoth doif in the sukkah. Use an animal as a wall for the sukkah. Rameh says it's possible and Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. So here it's actually the opposite way around for building a sukkah on top of an animal. Here using a wall, so what kind of animal would you use? Use a cow, an elephant? You can't use a cat because a cat won't be a very good wall. It's not big enough. Get a big animal, you want to use it as a wall for a sukkah machlikas. Anything which has got a life in it, any animal or human being, in a sukkah, can't be used as a wall for a sukkah. Can't be used as a post for a movi. It can't be used as the corner posts for these wells which we would drink from on Aliyah Levega. And you can't use it as a cover for a grave. You're supposed to put a monument by a gravestone. You can't use a live animal. In case you can't use it as a get. Let's say you've got no parchment. So what you do is, or no paper. So you take a cat, you write on it a get, and give it to your wife. It's no good according to Amir. The reason you can't use a cow as a wall for your sukkah is it might die. It might run away. Machlokas, what's the svar of Amir? Will the animal die or will the animal run away? So the more explains. Where would there be an afkamina? Where would there be a difference between the svar of it might die or it might run away? So more like this. The pill kosher, a tied up elephant, who cares if it dies? It'll still be 10 tvachim high. Keep pligi the pill shin a kosher which is not tied up. The mandam Hashemotomos lechayshinon, it won't matter. The mandam agzer shemotiva chayshinon, since it's not tied up, it could run away. So that would be an afkamina between the mandama, we chayshish for lisa, we chayshish for bricha, or we chayshish for death, or we chayshish for running away. In the case of an elephant, it's not tied up. Let's be scared and might run away. So more seconds. And everybody agrees that that's no good. It might run away. It's tied up. The shaila is not about running away, because running away, of course, would be a problem. But we're talking about an animal which is tied up. Since it's tied up, it can't run away. So the chashash is it might die. Let's be choishesh that it might die. So the Lord says, death is not shchiach. That's the machlokas basically. Are we choishesh for death? Are we mechuyev to be choishesh for the unlikely scenario that the animal will die during the week of Sukkot? We want to learn that for a wall of Sukkot to be kosher, there mustn't be a 3 tvachim gap from the floor to the wall. An elephant standing is definitely going to have 3 tvachim from the floor to the tummy of the elephant. So if that's the case, there's a space. And so more, you make a fence between the floor and the stomach of the elephant, and that way you've got a wall. Maybe the animal will start crouching, and if it starts crouching, you will lose the height. So you've also got ropes tying the elephant up. It can't crouch because it's tying elephants up. There's no space from the floor to its stomach because there's a fence underneath. It's kosher. If that's the case, that it's tied up with ropes upwards and it's got a fence underneath, even if it dies, who cares? It's still going to be there. And it's wonderful. You might rely on lovud from the height of the elephant, from the top of the elephant to the schach, and leave a gap of less than 3 tvachim. The kibbutz the mice, once it dies, kavtze, it will lower a little bit because the ropes will stretch and it will become a slightly shrink. But a person will realize that now he hasn't got lovud and his sukkah is possible. Now we're going to have a whole sugya of wichoshesh for misa. This is an important shayla. It has many, many ramifications. Or we choishesh that something or somebody is going to die. At this Gemara was saying that according to Amir, the reason you can't use an animal as a wall for your sukkah is where we're concerned the animal might die without you noticing. Now the Gemara now says, are we choishes for such a thing? Do we have to take into consideration the possibility that an animal might die? What's that? A girl whose daughter of Yisroel married a Kohen. The husband's gone away. The halacha is if you're married to a Kohen, you're allowed to eat truma. Once the husband dies, the wife is not allowed to eat truma. So the question over here is the husband's gone away. If the husband's alive, she can eat truma. If the husband's dead, she can't. So is she allowed to eat truma? The Mishnah says she's allowed to eat truma. We're not concerned the husband died. We asked, how is it? If a man says to his wife, here's a get for 1 hour, which should take force an hour before I die, then halacha is she can't eat truma immediately. Why? Because every minute we're choishes that maybe he'll die in 1 hour. So what happens is we've got a contradiction. When the husband's gone away and we don't know if he's alive or dead, we say eat truma because we're not choishes, he might be dead. And when we say here's the get an hour before the death, he's not allowed to eat truma. Why? Because maybe he's going to die in an hour. So we are choishes from Misa. This is Rabbi, which is choishes from Misa. This is not choishes from Misa. We have to be aware that Rameir's shitta is v'chayshlon and miyuta. The Rameir says that when you've got something which is even a rare occurrence, if it's a possibility, we have to take it into consideration and be concerned about it. So the Gemara says this is the machlikus of men Rabbi Yehuda, choishes l'misa or not. So Rameir says you're choishes l'misa, she can't eat truma. Rabbi Yehuda says not. And the Gemara brings another right, the tanya. And the kerach yain ben akutim, we've had this before many times. If you buy wine and you haven't got time to take Tumas Samaisus, so you look into the Osad Lafish, the two look that I'm going to separate in Tuma, the Shui Tuma immediately. I saw 10 Maisa Vision, Tisha Maisa, Sheni, 9 Maisa, Sheni, Meichel, you redeem it to Shis Via Divi Ameh. Top of Dala Dom Dala, if I build Rabbi Bishman, they all forbid it. Why do they forbid it? If you remember, we said the jug might smash after you've drunk from it, before you've had a chance to separate the Tumas and Maisas. So the Mafreya, backwards it came out, that it became clarified that what you were drinking did not have Tumas and Maisas taken away. The Gemara at this stage compares the breaking of a jug to the death of a person. And yet over here we see the Rameir is not choishesh that the jug will break. So similarly, he is not choishesh that person will die. Rabbi Yehuda is choishesh that person will die, and that the jug will break. So it's a contradiction. And so more epoch, we have to turn it around. The Tanya also the baby different. Succca, Meir Poisa, Rabbi Yehuda Machshir. So this is where we're going to stop. Let's get it clear. At this stage, we're saying like this: that a wall of a sukkah made out of an animal, a live animal, according to Rabbi, is no good because we're choishesh that the animal might die. And the Yehuda says it's okay. We're not choishesh the animal might die. Similarly, Rabbi holds that a woman whose husband is not around, she cannot eat truma because we're choishesh that maybe the husband's dead. The Yehuda says yes, she can. Similarly, when we've got a jug and we're not sure whether it is going to, whether the jug is going to break, it's the same machlokas. Or we choishesh that the jug will break or not, regarding whether we allow you to drink the wine, relying on the fact that you're going to take Tumas and Maisas later, which you separated before. Okay, so Mitzvah Hashem will carry on Kasha Dvameir ad Dvameir. So Kasha Dvameir Dvameir, that's what we're going to start from the Mitzvah Hashem. Hatzlacha everybody, everybody's enjoying the holidays to wherever they are and however it is.